Hello, and a very warm welcome to this 1.1 session. My name is Els, and let me give you a little bit of a background why we started this project. This was way back in May 2020, and it was in a very stressful time, the middle of the pandemic. And we felt that as several of us working for One Point Consulting or meditating on a regular basis, we felt that it might be a good idea to share some of these thoughts and practices with a wider audience. And so what we have been doing since then is every fortnight on Fridays, we invite an experienced meditator and we ask him or her to share their thoughts about a particular topic, but also to guide us into a short meditation. And these meditations are really very powerful. They're very beautiful. We have so far these recordings in the library available on YouTube, and I believe we have more than 120 sessions now recorded. Speakers come from all over the world, both UK as well as internationally. Today I'm very pleased to welcome Judy Johnson, who joins us from Halifax in Canada. For 35 years, Judy has worked as a facilitator and coaching consultant in leadership development and organizational effectiveness. She works with governments, with private and community-based organizations, both nationally as well as internationally. She holds a Bachelor of Social Work and a Master's of Adult Education. Judy has been meditating for many, many years. She practices Raja Yoga. We call it the yoga of the mind. And she's also an author of several books. For example, The 7 Secrets of the Universe, which was published in 2014. Beautiful Thoughts, 2019. A co-author of AZ Spiritual Literacy, 2016. Living as Art. And then also Return to the Source, the God Experience, her most recent one. The topic for the session today is Antifragile, Building Resilience to Thrive in Life. So very warm welcome to you, Judy.
Thank you, Els, and greetings to everyone. I am just starting my day here in Halifax, and wherever you are in the world, if you're taking this short little time out for yourself to learn, to listen, that's fantastic. So really appreciate you joining us. I like very much this topic that Els has sort of chosen for me, helped construct, and it's around antifragility, which is a very interesting concept, and it's part of the resilience family. So I'd like to just share with you a little bit learnings from resilience, the whole research field called resilience. It's become quite a popular word today in the world, and I feel it's very, very necessary for us right now. So share a little bit of background. I've been working with this concept for many, many years now in my facilitation and consulting world, but it's originally a word that comes to us from physics. It just means to bounce back or to recoil. And the first time that this word resilience was ever used in relation to people was in the 1970s in Hawaii, where a psychologist was working with marginalized families and discovered how children of troubled families living with addictions and violence and poverty and other such difficulties, how many of the children went on to be to repeat those patterns of their parents. So she did a longitudinal study of these children and families over time, discovered that a few, did really well. They thrived, they flourished, they completely changed the patterns in their adult lives that they had been brought up with as children, and thus began her research into, well, what is it that makes one person thrive and somebody else not? So since then, we've come quite a distance in understanding what helps people thrive, what helps people be resilient. And for me as a meditator, I find this very interesting because some of the language overlaps with the meditation world that I live in, and very happily for the last few decades. So I'd like to share now that we've been at this resilience work for a while, there's sort of three platforms of resilience. And I'd like to just take you through those three and up to the top one, which is, I feel, an invitation for us all to rise to that level right now. So the basic resilience was like physics. When something happens to you, do you break or do you bend? Do you bounce back quickly? So that was the initial early start understanding of resilience. It's just the capacity to bounce back and keep going after and during life's difficult situations. But then after some time, we began to think, well, bouncing back is one thing, but what about flourishing? And this is where the Hawaii work, they dug deeper and looked further into, okay, they survived, these kids, and they moved on. But even more interesting, how did they thrive? How did they go beyond just surviving to thriving? And so then flourishing, thriving, blooming, other words were used, and this I would consider now sort of the second level. So yes, you survived, you bounced back, you carried on, but how much you're growing, fulfilling your own potential as a human being would be, let's say, the next level. But this is the interesting one that I'm finding emerging now in the world at this time, and it matches nicely with our meditation language. So here in the Raja Yoga study, we hear often the words to become unshakable and immovable. And that doesn't mean stubborn. It means that no matter what happens, I don't break. I don't need to bounce back because I didn't really move from my inner platform of peace, of self-respect, of dignity, of positivity. So this is where the words overlapped for me, and I find this work of this gentleman, Nassim Taleb, was the one to introduce this concept. And he's a statistician, economist, and he was looking at the things in the world that are fragile. Many things are fragile and they break. And he thought, gee, even people can be very fragile and they can be very sensitive. And so he coined the term antifragile. Maybe we'll get a new word for this, but that was his introduction to this field, which I think offers a third level of resilience to get stronger through the difficulties that we're facing, through the randomness, the disorder, the chaos, the VUCA world that we live in. And instead of being shaken by it, to become actually unshakable. And this is the word that was very similar to the meditation practice, which is why it caught my attention. This gentleman writing about antifragility and what does it really mean. So I'm not an expert, but I'll give you some examples of this. Here we have fragile. Something happens, I no longer function. I break down, I break apart. We have resilient, the first two levels. If something happens, I stand up again. Antifragile, something happens to me, I learn from it and I improve. I get stronger. So instead of breaking, instead of bouncing back, I actually morph, adjust, adapt, grow, develop, carry on in a stronger, I suppose you could say, probably viruses are probably pretty anti-fragile because they seem to do that. We're not thinking about mutating ourselves as humans, but this idea that I can adjust to the environment and maintain myself. I like to think of water as an example of this because water is always inherently the same thing, H2O, but it can come in so many different forms depending on the vessel, the shape of the vessel. It can look like this water. It can look like that. It can look like this. Again, depending on the vessel that's holding it, it takes a different shape or form, and yet it's always inherently H2O. Its nature, inherent nature, never changes. Spiritually speaking, that's what antifragility would mean, is that my nature, no matter what form it needs to take in this moment, in this situation, my inherent nature of peace, stability, calm, love, generosity, positivity, power never changes. So, examples of anti-fragility that we all know in our lives. Children, their little bodies are very fragile. They play like crazy in playgrounds. They bump, they crash, and they get stronger. They get better mental hand motor coordination. They become more agile and they become more confident. So there's a sign of anti-fragility. Another one would be cybersecurity. Every time there's another hack, another virus that gets introduced into our computer systems, the cybersecurity networks get stronger and better and more resilient, more capable, let's say. Fire alarms, great example of anti-fragility. If you had the same, they're random. They come at us unexpectedly. If they were regular every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., the alarm goes off. It's kind of like putting Post-it notes all over my fridge. The first week I see them, I'm reminded, I'm inspired. The next week I don't even notice they're there, because things sink into the subconscious. So the randomness of a fire alarm is what actually makes us respond, and get the drill to respond quickly. So that would be an example. This, Roger Federer, arguably one of the greatest tennis players up until now, he only got as good as he got because he was playing against Nadal. He was playing against someone who was almost his equal, which meant randomly, unexpectedly, he would catch him off guard, and therefore he would have to get stronger and better. So these are because he wanted to. He wanted to be a master of his craft, which he became. So these are examples of anti-fragile. You get stronger in the face of calamity and difficulty. So how do we move up these levels? In the resilience world, we're always trying to move up to a higher level of resilience, right? How do we do that? So for the first one, just basic resilience. Bending or not breaking, it's commonly understood that these are the main conditions. These factors support basic resilience in a human being. So I'm taking care of my physical and mental health. I have faith in myself. Someone else has faith in me. Very often for the children in Hawaii, this was the factor that made the difference for them, is that someone outside of their family, maybe a teacher at school, someone else's mom or dad, had faith in them. And so for the first time, they saw themselves as worthy, where they had not got that message in their home environment. Trusting in positive outcomes, a bit of an optimistic outlook, a purpose or meaning for life that's greater than the circumstance. So most people who have higher power, which is listed as the bottom one here, but they have a purpose. Their life has meaning because it's dedicated to something larger than just themselves and their own pleasure. Those people tend to, that condition supports resilience. Determination, so you've got to love your aim enough to keep going, even when things get difficult. And then community. They have a sense of community and belonging. Very important conditions for basic resilience. And the last one, connection to a higher power. So again, you're outside of yourself. It protects the person from being completely self-absorbed and knowing that there's strength and power coming in. So from all the research, these are the conditions that support resilience. So that moves us up to the resilience level. How do we flourish? Well, this needs something a little bit more and a little bit more subtle. So this previous set of conditions are connected almost to, you could say, like having a balanced lifestyle: emotional, mental, social, physical, spiritual health. Balanced. Flourish, to go into the thriving level of resilience, you actually need to make it a practice to reflect on your lived experience, to make meaning and learn. Learn from everything that happens to you. Instead of just something bad happened, I tell the story to my friends over coffee, and then I go out the door and it might happen again. I didn't actually learn anything so that I'd be wiser next time, or I'd be prepared. So for the next level of resilience, thriving, I need to have a practice of reflecting and drawing the wisdom from my lived experience, because wisdom is fertilizer for growth, which is why we use the flower imagery for thriving, because it's like blossoming. You can't blossom without good fertilizer. So life's difficult events are actually not the fertilizer. The fertilizer is the wisdom I draw from those lived experiences. I can only do that through a practice of reflection. So that's how we move to the next level, up from resilience to thriving or flourishing. But here's what I brought for you today. These are, if we want to go up to the next level and become anti-fragile, unshakable, immovable in the face of difficulties. And I will actually, I'm just checking my time here. I'm noticing I've got enough time that I could tell you these and we could still do a little bit of a meditation. So you really need to dedicate yourself to daily, consistent personal practices, a series of daily and actually minute to minute. But you need to revisit these practices daily. You need to make sure you're on track with these practices daily. And I brought for you today 6, I think. 6 personal practices to help you become anti-fragile. I'm aware I'm speaking a bit quickly here. I hope it's all being absorbed, but I know I'm speaking to a professional audience and I'm sure you're getting it. So here they go. Here's the 6 practices that, once you still have to get everything in order in your in a balanced life. You still need to take care of your physical health, your mental health, your social community. All of these things you still need to do. The practice of reflection you still need to do. But then going up a level, here are 6 common practices used by those individuals who are attaining a level of unshakability in our crazy world right now. So first one, no surprise, faith. Faith is a pillar for most people who stand calm, dignified, peaceful in the face of all kinds of difficulties. One thing they all share in common, and it's a regular practice, is to reconnect with their faith. Now, this can be faith in God, faith in a supreme being, but also faith in pure intentions and positive outcomes. I think it was Nelson Mandela who said, it always seems impossible until it's done. Something like that, until we achieve it or until we do it. So having faith that a pure intention actually has to come to fruition at some point because it's pure. So always checking back with my intentions and faith in positive outcomes, that in the end, everything will work out okay. And that if there's pure intention and pure input of energy, so it's not selfish motivated, it's not selfishly driven. If it is meant for benefit, even benefit for self and others, but it's not selfish, not greedy, it's not attached, it's not ego, that it will find friends along the way, it will get support, and everything needed to make it happen will come, and therefore positive outcomes. It's one of the big factors. One of the big practices is to have faith in positive outcomes. So even if you don't, this is how the anti-fragile practices are so rigorous. I have to check myself throughout the day. And if I find myself doubting a positive outcome is likely, I make a choice to reset myself into an attitude of faith. I mean, it's just a simple choice. I can choose to go down the doubt path, or I can choose to put a full stop in that moment and say, well, it's not going to hurt me to just have faith. Why don't I just have faith that this is going to work out? And I feed that energy. It grows, of course. The second practice, rigorous practice, is to find benefit in everything. There's always something beneficial in every scene that life offers us that can equip me, can support me, or guide me to move forward if I'm paying attention. The quicker I find what is there of benefit in this seemingly very dire situation, the quicker I find it, the less I suffer, and the less I waste my time and energy worrying, complaining in a distress reaction. So it's a practice. This is why they're practices, to find benefit in everything. It gets easier over time. The more you practice something, it gets easier. I can very quickly now see, I can see the benefit. It's almost like it shines, it jumps up out of the situation and presents itself to me. Oh, look, I'm going to be able to do this better, or something. Practice number 2. Practice number 3, in Japan, they have this practice of taking the broken pottery and filling the cracks with gold. I don't know what the name is in Japanese of this practice, but it's the most beautiful pottery. And really, we've all got weaknesses. Everyone around us has weaknesses. But just like the Japanese, instead of, highlighting the cracks or dismissing or throwing someone out because of their weaknesses, including myself, throwing myself under the bus, criticizing myself, putting myself down, instead of using weaknesses in a very harsh and judgmental and critical way, the practice to become antifragile is to actually fill every weakness I see with light. And what happens over time is I don't notice the weaknesses as much. They're there, but I'm noticing the light. Because what are you drawn to? What are the eyes drawn to in this picture but the beauty of the gold, right? It's like the cracks become something that blend into the overall beauty of the vase in front of us. So filling weaknesses with light. This is a practice. Every time I see a weakness, it's just to fill it with love and compassion and light. Just like, okay, this will change. Okay, let's look at the strength instead of the weakness in this case. Very rigorous practice. Number 4, flip the frame to flip the feeling. So this is a little kaleidoscope lens here. And in a kaleidoscope, it's just little shards, little bits of broken plastic or glass or beads or pebbles. And then you just turn it. And every time you turn it, there's a beautiful view. And so if I flip the frame, so I turn my own mind from negative to positive, an optimistic view, then immediately what happens is my feelings flip. So instead of coming into a situation with downer energy, heavy energy, I actually am seeing the beauty in the scene. I'm seeing the beauty. But the most important thing is that changes my feelings. And I bring different feelings to the situation. Again, by doing that, I stay more stable, because negative feelings easily get inflamed by other negative feelings, and then I shake. 5th, face with humility. The insight. So I have to face all the lessons that life is teaching me. If I just face them with humility, insight becomes the gift I receive from a simple, humble review of my own mistakes with the intention to improve myself and my response, my behavior. So facing things with humility and bowing to the fact that, in a way, what I'm doing is I'm bowing. By bowing, what I'm doing is I'm not allowing ego to create the armor in me. I am making myself soft and allowing life to shape me in a positive way, because life shapes me in a very hard and harsh way when my armor comes up due to ego. But life shapes me in a very loving way when I'm humble. So that's number 5. And the last one, in a world full of data, in a world full of information, to always be looking for essence. So even in the way I communicate, am I communicating the essence of a message, or am I adding extrapolations and exaggerations and details that are not necessary, and therefore draining people's energy listening to me and draining my energy explaining all of that? Finding the essence. So using, my insight to pick out what is it that's most important in this situation. So I don't know who I'm interacting with, but I think I've reached the end in time for a little meditation. So maybe I will invite Maitri, if you don't mind, to put up the beautiful red image that you use for the meditation. I'll stop sharing now. And perhaps we can just have a 3 or 4 minute meditation before our half-minute hour is up. So if the image could go up, Maitri, I don't know if you're there, but let's just take a moment and pull into silence inside our own minds. And keep your eyes open if you would. And just, I mean, if you're listening earphone only, that's okay. Do what you've got to do. But for those of us watching on screen, if you can just rest your eyes gently on the center point, the light at the center of this beautiful aura, this beautiful orange glow of light emanating out from this point. And just take one deep breath in. Center yourself, ground yourself in your body, in your chair, wherever you are, and come into the center of your own awareness behind the eyes, to the point of awareness that is the being that I am. Just hold for a moment the stillness inside yourself, knowing that no matter what happens around you, when you come back to this silent, still place, you are completely unshakable. You are powerful. You're peaceful. You are the master of your own mind, your own being, your own life. Power to be unshakable is to be found in this silent, concentrated point of awareness. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judy. That was a very special session. And I've written down a few things for myself. I particularly like when you explained about there's benefit in every situation. And if I can practice that, I will more and more easily see that in even very adverse situations. But also your definition of anti-fragile. We don't even need to bounce back if we are stable, if we are unshakable in that situation. And the idea that wisdom is fertilizer for growth. So very powerful ideas to further explore. So thank you so much.
Thank
also,
you.
A big thank you to the technical team. And then our next session is going to be on the topic of the topic is for the next session, When I Change, the World Will Change, and that will be with Paramjit Basra, who will join us from the UK for that session. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed it, and all the best, and have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, Els.